The boutique smelled like steamed satin and sprayed lilacs, the kind of artificial calm meant to lull you into thinking everything was fine. I stood under the warm spotlight, my reflection encased in a frame of mirrors, nodding politely as the seamstress pinched the fabric at my waist one last time. "Almost done," she chirped. I smiled, tight-lipped, texting Reed beneath the dressing room curtain. "Final fitting looks perfect." Nervous, but good nervous. The 3 dots of his response danced for a second before disappearing. Typical. Always taking his time to say the right thing. I admired that about him. Lately, I'd been craving his calm like oxygen. That's when the clerk, arms juggling a clipboard and receipt roll, handed me a printout. "Just your final confirmation." "Oh, wait, that might be." "Oh no, sorry, that's not." But I'd already read it. A second purchase. Same SKU. Same style. Same ivory lace with pearl trim. Name, Declan R. Larry. Time, 3 hours after mine. My fingers clenched the receipt, so tightly it creased across the center. I reread it twice, heart sinking slower each time. This wasn't a mistake. It was a message. Someone was planning to wear white at my wedding. Someone with the nerve to do it under his own name. The only person audacious enough in this family to believe he had a right to center stage again. I exhaled slowly, folding the paper into a perfect square. "Thanks," I told the clerk, voice even. She blinked, not realizing she'd just handed me the match to a grenade. I left the boutique under Portland's low gray sky, the drizzle barely breaking past the canopy of downtown's aged brick awnings. As I unlocked the car, my phone buzzed. It was Declan. A selfie. He stood in a dressing room mirror, grinning like a game show host, dressed in a white blazer with a cascading bridal sash. Masculine, yes, but unmistakably bridal. His caption read, "Spotlight's mine this time." I nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was just so him. Always performing. Always turning love into a competition. The first flashback hit me before I even left the parking lot. My 10th birthday. I'd begged for a strawberry shortcake. Declan accidentally knocked it off the table, then burst into tears so loud Dad told me to comfort him. I was forced to apologize, cheeks still sticky with frosting, while Declan sobbed into the attention like a sponge. But this wasn't that. This didn't break me. It warned me. I forwarded the photo to Juno with no caption, then again to Zora. Both knew what it meant. Both had seen how far Declan would go to steal light, even if it meant setting the house on fire just to watch shadows dance. The windshield blurred under the rain. My wipers squeaked to life. I wondered aloud, voice just above the hum of traffic. What kind of man buys a dress to upstage his sister at her own wedding? Would you? Would you stay silent? Or would you fight? By the time I turned onto my parents' block, the decision was already forming like frost on glass. Lois opened the front door before I knocked. She always knew the rhythm of my footsteps. "Vesper," she said, her voice soaked in that fragile disappointment she wore like perfume. "You're late." Dinner was already plated. Meatloaf, green beans, over boiled potatoes, reliably tasteless, reliably hers. Vernon looked up from his tablet only long enough to nod. The TV murmured in the background, some political rant disguised as news. We sat. Small talk. Church fundraisers. A neighbor's dog died. Then Lois folded her napkin into a square. Her tells were always geometric. "I was thinking," she began, soft like poisoned silk. "It might be nice if Declan walked you down the aisle too. For symmetry. You know, since your father and I are—" she glanced at Vernon. He didn't meet my eyes. "You're overreacting again," he muttered, eyes fixed on his plate. "It's always drama with you." I set my fork down. Deliberate. Quiet. They had already spoken to him. They'd already picked a side. No, worse, they never saw sides to begin with. Only scenery where Declan stood center, and I was painted in shadows behind him. "I'm not reacting," I said. "I'm choosing." "Choosing what?" Lois whispered, feigning confusion. "Not to disappear this time. Would you stay at that table? Would you pretend it's still just a misunderstanding? Or would you finally get up?" I stood. After dinner, I climbed to the attic. The floorboards groaned like they were trying to warn me back. But I knew what I was looking for. The storage box was exactly where I left it, marked Vesper, school. Inside were dusty trophies, old report cards, a third-place science fair ribbon I'd once cried over. But underneath it all, letters, dozens of them, all from Vernon, all addressed to Declan. "Proud of you, son. You've got the spark I never had. Don't let anyone steal your spotlight, not even your sister. She's not built for it." Every line seared deeper than the last. He hadn't just ignored me. He'd trained Declan to step over me. Loyalty without love is just obedience. I finally understood that. I sat there, surrounded by the ghosts of paper and ink, letting the grief dry into something sharper. My phone lit up. A message from Reed, "You okay?" I typed, "Not yet, but I will be." Then another to Juno, "Get Zora. I have a plan." I wasn't going to surrender my wedding to anyone. Not to the brother who couldn't bear being background. Not to the parents who'd written me out of their script long ago. This wasn't a story they got to narrate anymore. I tapped my notes app, opened a fresh page. Contingency plan. Operation Spotlight Reversal. I outlined names, places, timelines. Quiet. Surgical. Precise. Let Declan show up in white. Let them all. Because I'd be ready. The boardroom smelled like aged leather and control. Zora Chen's signature scent. I sat across from her, pen poised above the contract, flanked by Reed's steady hand on my knee and the silence that always came before action. Outside the rain had let up, but inside me, a storm had gathered for days. "No guest may arrive in white," Zora read aloud, underlining the clause. "Once you sign, it becomes enforceable on-site. You'll have protection." Protection. That word never belonged in weddings, did it? Reed leaned in. "This isn't about overreacting. It's about protecting your moment." His voice was low, grounding, like gravel pressed into calm. I nodded, though my fingers trembled slightly around the pen. Not from fear, no. This was something else. A new kind of clarity that didn't ask for permission anymore. I thought about how many times I'd made myself smaller just to fit inside their version of peace. How many birthdays, dances, dinners I'd quietly handed over to Declan just to avoid another fight. No more. I signed. The screen of my phone lit up as I slid it back into my purse. A message from Lois. "Hope you're not making a fuss over nothing." My lips curled in something between a scoff and a smile. "Have you ever drawn a line in the sand?" I whispered to no one, and waited for someone to cross it? Because I had, and I already knew who would. The garden at Elm's estate shimmered with golden light by late afternoon, the kind that made everything feel like a dream. Rows of chairs, candles flickering in hurricane glass, the aisle ribboned in white petals. The hum of anticipation buzzed behind the tent walls as guests settled, but I felt it like static under my skin. Then came the buzz of 1,000 phones. Declan appeared at the top of the hill. White veil, white dress, full length, draped with lace, cinched at the waist like a parody of Grace. He was live streaming. "This is my day too," his voice echoed into the air as he descended the aisle, his followers multiplying by the second, hearts and thumbs up floating beside his grin. Gasps rippled. Guests turned. Vernon, halfway to the altar, froze, then turned away. And Lois, God, Lois, ran to Declan's side. Camera rolling like this was a red carpet moment. I stood at the edge of the bridal tent. I felt my spine straighten, felt my pulse slow, not race. Zora looked to me. I nodded once. Security moved in with clean efficiency, polite hands guiding Declan off the grass, ignoring his flailing phone and sputtered protests. "She's controlling," he shouted. "She always was. I'm just making it fair." He dropped to his knees. "This is humiliation. This is theft." But the mic stayed in my hand. I walked to the center. Guests had risen. A hush fell like a curtain. Camden Reyes adjusted his headset. "We'll be taking a brief pause due to an unexpected incident," he announced. Then I lifted the mic. "I didn't invite drama," I said slowly, my voice even steady. "But I won't host it either." Silence. Then a clap. Then another. And another. Declan tried again, desperate now. "She's selfish. Obsessed with control." I turned. "Power doesn't come from the spotlight you steal," I said, holding his eyes. "It comes from the truth you own." It landed. Clean. Undeniable. Do you believe truth or optics win in a family fight? Because in that moment, it wasn't about the dress. It was about every time I let them make me question what I knew was real. And I was done. The ceremony resumed quietly, like a record, gently picked up and placed back into rhythm. But the seats where Lois and Vernon were meant to sit? Empty. I took Mateo St. Clair's arm instead. He didn't speak. Didn't need to. His presence was the opposite of Declan's. Silent. Steady. Declan and Marin were already gone by the time we stepped out. The limousine peeled away from the side gate like a retreat. And me? My steps didn't falter. The dress still trailed like a sigh behind me. But I wasn't a bride clinging to illusions. I was a woman walking toward her own vow. Reed waited, his eyes not asking if I was okay. He already knew. Our hands met. Fingers wove together like we'd practiced this in 100 lifetimes before. The moment you walk away, I'd once been told, is also the moment you decide who you are. So I walked, and this time I didn't look back. The coffee on my desk had gone cold, untouched for hours. I watched the screen again. Declan's smug face framed in faux sincerity, tears that never quite reached his eyes. His latest stunt, a live stream re-edit, casting the wedding chaos as a healing through performance piece for trauma survivors. He called it the day. I took back my voice. The comments were a vortex of venom and sympathy. She robbed her brother of a chance to heal. Bridezilla's sister goes nuclear. Always knew she was the problem. I didn't blink. My thumb hovered over the screen, not to respond, but to absorb. A message lit up from Zora. Lois is threatening a defamation suit. Heads up. I could almost hear the smirk behind the text. Reed stepped into the office, holding a sandwich I wouldn't touch. "You need to eat something." "They want war," I murmured, eyes still locked on the screen. "Let them come. I don't lose to shadows anymore." 2 hours later, a man with a camera rang our doorbell. I didn't answer. The next day, someone followed me from the parking deck to the lobby of my firm. The receptionist pretended not to notice. Some people are blamed because they're wrong. Others? Because they finally spoke. Have you ever been blamed for something just because you refused to stay silent? 6 weeks out, I still hadn't unpacked the last moving box when Ivy called. "Vesper," she said gently, "it's your father. Heart failure. ICU." I drove anyway. I parked outside the ER and stayed in the car. Wipers pushed the mist off the windshield like it mattered. Inside, beeping monitors and quiet voices filtered through the glass doors. But I didn't move. I remembered him standing in my bedroom doorway when I was 15. I had won my state's writing contest. He glanced at the certificate, then asked, "Has Declan found a new app idea yet?" Reed sat beside me in silence. Just that, no pressure, no comfort speech. Just presence. "I wanted to be enough for him once," I whispered. "Just once." But some ghosts only appear to haunt, not to heal. Is forgiveness owed if it only comes after collapse? 2 days later, I stood in the firm's conference room, ready to pitch a marketing strategy for a major lifestyle brand. My slides loaded. Client nous dead. Everything clicked, until the VP from their side leaned in. "We've seen this before," she said. Confusion twisted in my gut. She turned her laptop. Same colors, layout, even my phrasing, presented by a rival firm. Logo watermarked in the corner. Delia. I didn't scream. I didn't even flinch. I opened my iPad, pulled up the backup draft, timestamped, geotagged. Zora appeared on screen from Zoom, dressed in charcoal and war paint. Delia Turner violated her idea. We've submitted internal breach documentation. Legal follows this afternoon. The room stilled. The client blinked. "We deeply regret this," they said. "Proposal's yours." Delia was escorted out. Reed met me in the hallway. "You okay?" "They expect me to break," I said, slipping my tablet back into my bag. "They haven't seen me rebuild." "Have you ever been stabbed in the back and smiled anyway?" Matteo invited us to his daughter's 7th birthday that weekend. I brought pink frosting and bubbles. The garden smelled like oranges and laughter. Kids ran barefoot. No one cried about attention. No one claimed center stage. I watched Reed help string fairy lights between trees. Ivy passed out juice boxes. Zora argued with a toddler about cake portions. I exhaled. Before I left, I read from a card I wrote. "Family isn't blood. It's who shows up for you when no one else does." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A voicemail. From Lois. "Your brother's engaged. He wants you there." I didn't listen past that. I deleted it. Then I opened our old group chat and sent one last message. "I forgive all of you, but I'm not available anymore." When did you finally decide peace was worth more than reconciliation?